In Ashfeld, the land is divided up into various lords, ladies, dukes, and governors who control plots of land. These lords rule dynastically, at least most of the time, often passing on their power and position to their offspring when they die. In the small mountainous lands of Talam within Ashfeld, the lord of the land, Lucius Araneolus, was dealing with a personal crisis. His wife of almost 3 years had been unfaithful. Lucius loved his wife Delilah. She was a beautiful woman. She came from a good family, and when they had wed, he knew that their love was sure. But despite many attempts to sire a child, Delilah never seemed to become pregnant. Lucius feared it was his own fault, feared that perhaps it was something wrong with him that prevented his wife from the child she so wanted. And after a whole year of trying, war called him away. The situation in Heathmore had grown dire, and the actions of Apollyon had stirred up new battles and new enemies. New enemies from distant lands were appearing along their borders. The Wulin, for example. And worse yet, Ashfeld was too stretched thin to send him aid, so it was up to him and his own legions to go to battle. Though victorious, the campaign kept him from home for many weeks, and after nearly half a year of battle, he returned to find his wife in bed with another man. It was regrettable, painful, agonizingly so. But Lucius had sworn to love his wife, sworn to keep her and to care for her, and he supposed it couldn't be helped. He had been gone so long, after all. Surely one instance of infidelity could be forgiven. But it was not just one. Lord Lucius came to learn that she had had no less than 3 different callers since he had left, 2 of which had been his own knights, and another was a stable hand. Yet even this he might have forgiven if she had not become pregnant. Lucius had flown into a fury and lamentation. Was the child his? Whose was it? His wife had not only betrayed him, but the child she would sire might not even be his own. Lady Delilah had no apology to offer, no words of condolence or remorse. Lucius went to her chambers to demand answers, to demand some kind of apology, to at least give herself to the church and repent. But she said nothing, glaring at him in disgust. The man who could not give her what she wanted for so long was asking her to apologize for seeking her desire. Lucius could stand it no more. Delilah was stripped of her status as Lady of Taram and confined to the dungeons until she gave birth. The 3 men with whom she had had relations were all executed for their infidelity. Lucius could not ignore his duties and returned to the wars to finish his battles against the Wulin. But in that time, Delilah went into labor, and, by the time Lucius returned, she had died in childbirth. Lucius couldn't bring himself to keep the child, not after what he'd done. He couldn't even bear to look at her. His wife, dead in a cold dungeon. The little baby girl. Was she his? He couldn't know. In fact, he didn't deserve to know. He could not raise her. He did not deserve that honor. And she should not be held in the arms of a man who killed her mother. On the first week of her birth, Nora, the child of Delilah Araneolus, was delivered to the church to be raised by the nuns. Nora grew fast, strong, and clever. She was a fast study, learning her lessons on how to read and write, how to interpret the scriptures and how to apply them. But more than any of this, she learned to sneak, climb, and to eavesdrop. She knew little of her family before, and when she would ask the sisters of her past, they would wave her away or dodge the question. However, on her birthday each year, the sisters would deliver to her strange gifts from a stranger. They were always extravagant things like new dresses, dolls, or perfumes. She knew not who the stranger was, only that they were a man far older than her. She suspected it could be her father, and she would often sneak to the doors of the church on the nights of her birthday to see the man. But she was always caught before she could find him, always discovered. It infuriated her. She wanted to know who was giving her these gifts. Could it be her father? Who was her father? What became of her father and her mother? Why was she left in a church? One night, when she was 17 years old, Nora heard the Mother Superior speaking with her fellow nuns about her. She snuck along the walls to listen, and finally heard something that stirred within her. It was about her mother, and how she died in the dungeon. Mortified, Nora shook with shock, sadness, and then anger. The Lord of Taram had imprisoned her mother and killed her. Was that why she was orphaned? Well, he would pay for his sins. Pay with his life. After she turned 18 and left the church, she sought out the spy master of Taram, one of the trainers of Peacekeepers, elite female spies and assassins in Ashfeld. She wanted to be trained as a peacekeeper, to which she agreed. Her knowledge of reading and writing was already excellent, and her limited experience sleuthing would help her in her training, so the spy master, known only as Mother Vidois, trained her to be an assassin. In 3 short years, the young Nora had grown into a woman. Nicknamed the Little Spider for her excellent climbing skills and for her adept knowledge of poisons, Nora had enhanced her skills in espionage, sword combat, and archery. She was tutored in languages, including those of the northern Valkenheim lands, the Maya, and even some of the gibberish spoken by the Wulin invaders. She was a fast learner, a diligent student, and quickly excelled in the Peacekeeper training. But she was always distracted with a goal she would not share with Mother Vidois, a desire to achieve something. One night, on her 21st birthday, she decided the time had come to achieve this goal, at long last leaving only a note for Mother Vidois to tell her of her plans. Nora snuck out of her training camp and left for the palace of Talam. There she would seek her prey. She climbed silently and quickly along the palace walls, reaching up to a window overlooking the city. She glanced inside to see it led to a bedchamber, a chamber of exquisite beauty. A large gossamer silk bed with crimson sheets and a mirror on the other side of the room to reveal the entire upper torso of the looker. There was a bedside table with a goblet there of wine half sipped. The owner of that goblet would return shortly. Surely this was the room of the Lord, the man who had killed her mother. This would go well for her. She slipped into the room silent as shadow, and with delicate care, she removed a vial from her robe, a poison intended to cause slow, agonizing death. It would not be painless. It would not be merciful. The victim would know agony for at least 2 or maybe even 3 full days before finally being killed by the toxin. She dipped the wine with 2 simple drops of the venom before pulling her hood back over her head and then running back for the window before she could be spotted. News spread quickly the next day of the Lord's sudden illness. Lord Lucius was bedridden and sickly. His breathing was labored, and he was spitting up blood. It was not likely he would survive, and the city knew it. Nora wanted to be proud, and yet she wasn't sure if she could be. As she wandered the city of Talam, contemplating her justice, she was approached by Mother Vidois, white-faced and terrified. "What have you done?" she asked simply. Nora told her of her desire to avenge her mother, told her of the Lord having kept her mother in a dungeon, leading to her death, how he needed to suffer. But Mother Vidois only shook her head in disbelief. "You ignorant child," she had said. "You know not what you have done." That night, as Lord Lucius lay in his bed breathing weakly, his eyes glazing and his fingers trembling on his chest, he heard the softest of movements by his window. Looking, he saw a shadowy figure slip into his bedroom. She wore a hood over her head, but he felt like he knew her face. The figure drew close and Lucius tried to move, but only broke into a furious coughing fit. "You. I know you," Lucius whispered. "Please, come closer, so I can see your face." The figure approached and knelt down beside the Lord Lucius. He reached out very carefully and pulled back the hood that hid her face. Lucius' breath caught in his throat, and he felt hot tears build in his eyes as he looked into the face of the child he so long ago thought lost. My God, child, how beautiful you are. Just like your mother." He broke into another coughing fit. Nora moved to help him, but he caught her hand in his withering fingers, his white beard reflecting the candlelight of his dark, cold room. "I've longed to see your face, but never felt I could. And now, at the end, do I see what a treasure you are." He looked into her eyes, and they only drove him to further sadness. "You were the one who poisoned me. It seems like my sins have finally caught up with me." Nora moved closer and tried to silence him with her hand, her eyes brimming with tears. "Do not cry for me, blessed girl. It is I who should weep tears, for the mother I stole from you, and for the life I neglected to give you. What a poor father I am, to not even have looked into the eyes of my little girl." Nora was weeping bitterly, knowing the truth of her mother and her father. Lucius hacked another bubble of blood from his lips, and then he looked wearily at Nora, who was drawing her dagger slowly, unable to watch this poor old man dying beneath her. "I thought of you every year we were apart, Nora. Did you like the gifts I brought you?" Nora wept and nodded weakly. "I'm glad. Oh, Nora, you look just like her. Just like your mother. Just like... He coughed again and gently placed his hand on her cheek. "I deserve this. This is what I deserve and what I desire. I want this. I deserve to die." Nora gently reached over and plunged the dagger into her father's heart, unable to bear any more. As the life left his eyes, a small smile came upon his face. "I love you, Nora," he whispered to the Peacekeeper. Nora fled from the palace that night, staggering over herself and stumbling into the remorseless shadows. She banished herself from Talam, banished herself from the sight of Mother Vaudois, fled from everything she once knew. The only place she dared to go was the church. There, in a private room behind the cathedral, she told the Mother Superior of everything she had heard, seen, and done. And after telling her the long, harrowing tale through chapped lips and tearful eyes, she asked only how she might atone, and if she ever could. And she could atone, by serving the lands her father had defended, not as the Lady of Talam. That right was lost to her. She would become the Queen of Spiders. Stories floated around Ashfeld for years to come of a spider who struck without sound, notice, or warning. It would sneak into tents, into homes, even into castles. Nowhere was safe from it. A samurai daimyo who lived in one of the most well-guarded citadels was found dead with his throat slit in his own home. A Zhongjun in the midst of battle died with a dagger in his back, and none even saw the spider that had killed him. A Viking raider, praised for his ability to escape any battle unharmed, was found a week after an invasion into Ashfeld, frothing at the mouth and dying to an unidentifiable poison, touched by the Queen of Spiders. None could escape the webs this spider left around Ashfeld, striking and cutting into any prey that dared to cross her territory, venturing out only to attack those who threatened this web. Even the infamous Astria herself, who had made her own few treks into Ashfeld, had learned to stay wary of Talam and its protected lands. For one night, when Horkos had dared to make camp near its border, the leader of the warmongers had awoken with a dagger near her head and a message beneath it warning her of the dangers lying ahead for her and her troops should they journey onward. Predators recognized their own, and so Astria avoided Talam on her journey, as would all those wise enough to know the danger of Nora Araneolus, the ruthless and vengeful Queen of Spiders.